Okay, now we're back into parentheses. I mentioned in the previous that parentheses, that P in our order of operations stands for a very specific function of parentheses. We may say parentheses all over the place, but this doesn't maybe refer to those kind of parentheses. So, oh no, it's okay. So let's talk about all of the different functions of parentheses, and then we'll talk about how to recognize which is which. So the P in order of operations, as we know, stands for parentheses, but a specific kind. And those parentheses refer to grouping. And let me give you an example of the kind of parentheses that function as grouping. For example, if you have 18 divided by 4 plus 5, and you'll notice it's not just a 4 plus 5, but that 4 plus 5 is inside the parentheses. This is an example of grouping. It says, okay, inside those parentheses, do that first. You're grouping that 4 and that 5 and adding them together. So if we do that, we know we'd have to do parentheses first, so 18 divided by 4 plus 5 is 9. So that's the type of parentheses that we're referring to in order of operations, when you can do something inside the parentheses first. And let me just finish this problem off. We would get 2. Okay, so let's go back to the different types of parentheses. My first division when I talk about parentheses is, are they working? Do they actually do something? Are they there for a specific reason? Most of the time they are, and if you're not sure, just assume that they are doing something. The other, if they're not working, I call them cosmetic. In other words, they're not necessary, but they make the expression look better or easier to read. So while we're here, let's talk about what that cosmetic would look like. The best example is if we had the expression 8 plus a negative 3, and I see that negative 3 is inside parentheses. But those parentheses aren't necessary. They're just there so that we can easily distinguish that negative 3 is negative, so we don't lose that little negative. This could just as easily be written as 8 plus a negative 3. And whatever your preference is, most mathematicians prefer to have that to indicate, oh yeah, be careful, there's a negative there, don't lose it. So those are going to be cosmetic. Another example of a cosmetic parentheses would be 8 squared. That would be the same thing. There's nothing going on inside those parentheses. There's just that little lonely 8, nothing to group there together. So you recognize that that would be the same as 8 squared, so those parentheses are just cosmetic. Okay, there we go. So in the working parentheses, and that's the ones we're really interested in because we've got to do something with them and they affect the problem. The biggest classification I see, as we mentioned, sometimes parentheses indicate grouping. And we just did, to remind you, we did the problem where we've got parentheses around the 4 plus 5 indicating there's something inside those parentheses to do. Okay? And you want to do that first. The next type of parentheses, and I think you probably might already know this, but you may not even realize it at this moment, is, let's do the example first, and you tell me what that means. If you see 3 and then parentheses 5, what's that indicating to do? Yeah, it's just saying just multiply 3 times 5. So another way we have working parentheses is to indicate multiplication. And you can see if we just lost those parentheses, we would have 35. No, 3, that doesn't mean 35. It does mean if we wanted to get rid of those parentheses, okay, that's just 3 times 5, another way to write multiplication. Final word on parentheses is that we have parentheses that look like this, are most familiar, and those, since they are so common, they're also just known as parentheses. So this whole group are actually parentheses, but they may just look different, but they all have the same function. The next thing we might see are the square ones, and those are known as brackets, but again, they just serve as parentheses. And then finally, when you need them, you may have these little squiggly guys, and those are braces, but again, they're all parentheses. How this might come up, for example, if I have 100 minus, and I'm going to use all of these parentheses first and show you how messy it can get. So I'm going to say minus 2 times 12 divided by 7 minus 4, close parentheses, close parentheses, close parentheses. So let me indicate who goes with what. Let's get a different color here. I'm not getting a different color. Okay, so here we have, oh, there we go. Those parentheses go together. These parentheses open and closed. And then finally, let's get another color here. These go with these. That's getting kind of messy, and you can't really tell. It's not as easy to see what's really going on there. So I would propose it's easier just to say 100 minus, you saw we had 3 levels of parentheses. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to just move this down some. Rewrite this using all of the options that we have for parentheses. So on that outside level, I'm going to use braces. The next level, I'm going to use brackets. And then on that inside, I'll just use regular parentheses. So now we close the brackets, and now we close the braces. And we will get to this problem shortly, actually in the next lesson. But before I leave you, I got to say one more time. You need to keep order of operations in mind always, that you have several things going on inside of an expression. Eventually, you're going to be able to perform the operations automatically and take a few shortcuts. But for now, I suggest you look at an expression and underline what you will do first, because it gets kind of messy and you just look at this and you just may freak out. You go, I don't know what to do. So if you just start by underlining what you'll do first, then you only have to do that. In the next step, if you haven't underlined something, then you know to leave it exactly the same. Okay, I'm ready to do some problems. So I will see you in the next video, order of operations examples.